Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts. This is a continuation of the digital breakout session 129, Responsibly Scaling Power Apps with a Low-Code Center of Excellence. I'm Sharon Berg. I'm going to go over some quick housekeeping items with everyone tonight, and then we will get started. Real quick, I want to show you how to engage with our experts tonight. Please use the chat to ask your questions. The questions will appear to everyone once we have approved them through our moderation process. Please vote for your favorite questions using the thumbs up icon. That way we will know that many of you have the same question. We will be answering questions verbally and over chat, and we will also include some resource links throughout the session and at the end of the session so that you know where to learn more about our topics. Also, some quick reminders, this session may be recorded. Please kindly help our moderators out. Do not spam the chat with your repeated questions or post inappropriate comments. We are going to do our best to get to all questions as best we can. And we also remind you to adhere to the Microsoft Code of Conduct. The Code of Conduct is posted in the chat, and I've also posted it here for your viewing. As a reminder, we are recording the session. Photography, video, or recording of the session on your end is not permitted. And with that, I will turn it over to our experts to introduce themselves.
Hi, I'll start. My name is James Lennick. I am a program manager on the Power Apps team. Ryan, do you want to go next?
I absolutely can. I'm having some trouble with my camera here. I don't know if you can actually see me or not, but I at least have the voice right. There you go. I'm Ryan. I lead the Power Apps product team in the engineering group, and recorded the session that we all just saw like a week ago. Anupma or Manuela next?
Sure, I can go next. Hi, my name is Anupma, folks. I'm the group program manager for governance in Power Platform. Excited to connect with you all today. Manuela.
Hello, hi, I'm Manuela. I'm a program manager on the Power Apps customer advisory team. So we work closely with our strategic and marquee customers to help them accelerate their adoption of the Power Platform in their organization. I'm excited to be answering your questions.
All right, awesome. So I think we can kick things off, and just to preface it with everyone who's tuned in, post your questions, post them early, post them often. I know there's a delay here, and we're going to get them answered. And if we hit a lull, then we'll try to even just ask some of the questions that we know came up in earlier sessions and address them because they'll most likely be relevant to you all. And I think the first one that Brett actually asked, and it was one that we probably answered multiple times over in one of the earlier sessions, which is like, hey, governance to me is all about the default organization. How do I rein it in? How do I approach development there within, especially coming from SharePoint Online? And I think, Anupma, it'd be great if you could just hit home some of the new governance and DLP capabilities that we're bringing to bear and how they could be used by people to rein in and really drive the right behavior in the default organization, default environment for their org. Excuse me.
Absolutely, James. Yeah, I mean, a lot of Ryan's sessions spoke directly to it. We are definitely adding a lot of coarse-grained as well as fine-grained controls to data loss prevention policies. So not only did we recently provide an ability to block certain connectors, but the fine-grained connector controls, such as you can go and control specific actions on a connector, or go and control specific endpoints of a connector, that really helps kind of speak to how you can take some of the connectors that you would have otherwise not felt comfortable exposing in the default environment and really bring it into your citizen developers' purview. And I can go on and on, like there's a control around data exfiltration and tenant isolation, as well as the SMTP header support that we've added to allow you to block email exfiltration. So these are just some of the proactive controls, but we are really ramping up the analytical capabilities in the analytics reporting, sort of come in through the tenant view and drill down into reports by environment type and then go to a specific environment, as well as up and coming investment in building a security risk dashboard for Power Platform that really helps you kind of stitch together the reactive component as a good yin and yang to the proactive governance. So you can look at the risky apps and flows, such as, if there is some on-prem data going to the cloud or cross-tenant behavior or Microsoft information protection label mismatch. Those are some of the investments that will really help you keep that oversight on your default environment.
Yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really excited to see the security risk assessment and start to see some of that threat detection, getting even more proactive. I'm excited to see that in action. So this is another good question that came up that I know we had earlier, and this one was a little bit more pointed, but it was more of a general question. And Anuma, I'd like you to tackle this too, if possible, which is like, hey, how do all of these capabilities in Center of Excellence, how do I apply these, and how do they apply to activity within the Power Platform coming from Office, like in the SharePoint Online experience or the new Teams integration, Project Oakdale, that just launched in public preview? How do I approach this building a CoE and governance in terms of like governing that usage? Is it different? Do I use a different tool set? And what's that like?
Yeah, so basically, the way we are making progress here, folks, is kind of get into the native Office controls. So, for example, Microsoft information protection for sensitive data would be a big play that Power Platform will slowly but surely embrace in fullness. Some of the existing DLP controls obviously will be offered at full parity with the Teams integration environments that are going to roll out there, as well as we have embraced the native Teams admin center controls, wherein you can turn on off specific apps and templates and use Teams permission policies to govern Power Platform integration into Teams at not only the tenant level controls, but also per user and going forward per group control. So you will see these types of proper marriages getting fostered as we amp up the Power Platform integration into Office. You get the best of Power Platform governance controls, but you also get to leverage the best of Office controls natively into these integrations. Hope that
And
helps.
that's great. Yeah, and even just to hit home, and obviously we didn't get to this nuance in this conversation, the way that actually it works behind the scenes with Project Oakdale is an actual Power Platform environment is being created and linked to each team in Teams. And Anuma, correct me if I'm wrong, but like effectively, these are just other environments. They applied the same DLP policies that you set across your other environments. They apply towards the activity in these environments. That activity still shows in our analytics reports, are still supported with the CoE Starter Kit. So to your point, you basically get all of the capabilities you have today applied to that same activity. Plus, to your point, the additional controls that come in from the Teams admin center experience. Correct?
Yeah, that is exactly right, James. And like some other concerns we've heard from our customers around like the scale out motion, right? Obviously, some of these shared environments come up through Teams. So very interesting things you would see as part of environment lifecycle management. Basically, the idea is that your team owners can play the system admins. We've really simplified the user management, wherein the team's owners, members, and guests get to play out-of-box security roles. So you don't have to worry about sort of dealing with role permissions and adding users one by one. So a lot of that gets automated. I mentioned environment lifecycle management. So as this environment comes up, as users engage in your team's team to go create new Power Platform apps and use the existing templates, as soon as your team's team is deleted, those environments get auto cleaned up or get auto deleted. They're also auto cleaned up based on user inactivity. So a lot of these mechanics of the central IT team being in an oversight role, while the individual environment management becomes more and more automated for these type of embedded integrations. Those are also some of the goodness you would see that hopefully helps ease off the concern around scale of environments.
Yeah, that's awesome. And moving on, so Sean, I love this question that Sean asked. He's like, hey, I love the tools, but what about the people? Should I have someone full-time running with Center of Excellence? What should that background be? And so, Manuel, I was hoping, like, hey, could you give a little bit of a background of like the kind of the people and change management, organizational management around getting a CoE off the ground and then making it successful? And I know Ryan replied to it, but I think it'd be great to hear your perspective on this.
I'm just trying to scare Sean. That's all. I'd like to give him a much better answer.
I'll scare everyone. So within the Center of Excellence, we see definitely like a variety of roles and responsibilities, and through working with our the customers that we work with, we see kind of a large spectrum. So some start very small with a dedicated person or two running the CoE, or sometimes even that being integrated into an existing role of someone who's looking after kind of digital transformation, or the Office 365 rollout, the modern workplace kind of rollout, and then through their adoption of the platform, that scales to organizations having multiple people, tens, 20s of people in their Center of Excellence, and that's kind of to tackle some of those roles that we see. So there's definitely an aspect of that administration and governance, making sure the foundation is laid for people to safely, securely, and confidently implement applications and flows on top of the Power Platform. But then there's also that element of kind of strategy and vision, like looking ahead where you want the Power Platform to go within the organization, and making sure that it's a key part of your digital transformation strategy. And then there's the element of support and of nurturing or user enablement, where you look at having internal training, having a career strategy for your makers, providing kind of templates and components that makers can reuse, supporting those makers along the way, and kind of automating some of the tasks that they are able to do. So I think like what we see typically is that organizations start small, so they lay out the foundations, then they monitor what's going on. So they see who's creating apps, what are they creating, who's using them, what are they used for, and then they evangelize on top of that by sharing success stories and kind of building on that, building on the foundation there. So yeah.
That's awesome. Thank you, Manuel. And I think that there's another question here, which I know came up earlier too, which was like, hey, it takes a lot of work to go install the CoE Starter Kit thing. I love it, but when's it going to become a part of the product? Like when do I not have to jump through these hoops? And this is kind of a question to like both you and Nutma and you, Manuela, because I know that we have kind of some strategy here around how we want to keep evolving that, but also pull things into the product. Maybe Anuma, you can talk to like what we're pulling in, and then Manuela, how we're still pushing the envelope on the starter kit capabilities.
Sure. So as we tried to address it in the last ATE session as well, all of the analytics reporting and all of the reactive governance workflows that CoE Toolkit so beautifully helps our admins engage with, we look at these capabilities across 3 types of interfaces. The first one is out of box. There is ongoing effort, and these integrations will continue to bring a lot of these capabilities natively into Power Platform Admin Center itself. At the same time, while we'll address sort of 80–90% of your regular enterprise scenarios, we realize that there will always be need for customizations and self-serve that complex organization, scaled organization need to undertake by themselves. So as the second pillar, first pillar being out of box, the second pillar would be these guided experiences that we'll continue to support and invest in around CoE Toolkit. The third pillar would be full sort of start from scratch self-serve. And some of these sort of preview offerings where we can send inventory and telemetry information for Canvas apps today into a Azure Data Lake instance that you can go set up. So we'll continue to play in all three buckets. Ultimately, our goal is to make our customers successful, governing the platform very effectively and efficiently, and whatever model works for you, whether it's out of box, whether it's the guided CoE, or whether it's full self-serve, start from scratch, or a combination of all three, all will be at your disposal to engage in. Manuel, do you want to add to it?
Yeah, how are we pushing the envelope on the starter kit, Manuel? Tell us.
So the CoE Starter Kit is definitely like heavily informed by the customers that we work with. It wouldn't if it's in the CoE, then we've seen it successfully used in some shape or form at a customer, and we templatize their approach and make it available to the many in the CoE Starter Kit. So we're kind of continuing to evolve and innovate in that space, and also use it as a sounding board of some features. So an area that we're heavily investing in going forward is that nurture and empower element, where we want to make it easier for makers to estimate the value that they're adding in their organization by building applications through certain identifying their measures and pain points, and providing them with a dashboard to say, this is how much money you saved, this is how many trees you've saved by automating paper forms, and then kind of an element of bringing the community, the maker community inside an organization closer together by creating apps that allow you to kind of have a mentorship program, internal training, or share your success stories. So those are definitely a heavy focus on that nurture and adoption element going forward.
Awesome. And Manuel, I'm going to stick with you. And Chris, I like Chris's question here where he asks, hey, how can I track development efforts within my organization to validate that there's not duplicate solutions being developed, or that apps aren't being orphaned or left to IT to pick up when people leave? And so I want you to answer that question. And I also would love if you also can tell folks what is the number one thing in the starter kit today that they should go try out, maybe that's easy to try out. So both the hardball of hey, orphan duplicate solutions, but also hey, what should people go try out that's maybe even a little easier than that business process?
Sure. Yeah. So the orphan is probably one of the easier ones. So a core part of the CoE Starter Kit is a Power BI dashboard that gives you a tenant level overview, a holistic overview of the resources in your tenant, and it works through looking at everything that's in your Power Platform environments and combining that with data we get through Office 365. So that's kind of the department, the job title, but also if that user no longer exists, then it shows up as blank in that report. So you're able to identify orphan resources. Even better if you know that someone is going to leave is about to leave the organization. So you've got some workflow through HR that notifies you of someone who's about to leave. You can use a tool called Set App Permissions to look for all the apps that maker has made across all the environments, and you can transfer ownership to someone in the IT department or someone else in their organization. So that's kind of multi-select everything that they've built and transfer ownership. So that's so through that you can take care of kind of orphan resources. And we've got a similar process in place for unused resources, where you can identify apps that haven't they've never been modified, they've not been launched recently, they have there's no one else is using them, and maybe they've got a title that's not very descriptive, like demo or test. So someone was just playing around. So you're able to identify those in the dashboard as well, and then you can either delete them or archive them from your environment to kind of prevent that sprawl. In terms of kind of making sure there's no duplication, there's I guess two efforts in the CoE Starter Kit that enable that. One is an app catalog, so you are able to kind of describe the application, categorize that, and publish that, and end users can discover available applications through the app catalog, and that could be the starting point that they use when they look at developing their own app. It's just looking to see if there's already an app that does that out there in their own organization. And as an admin, you would work on, applying correct tags and categories to the app catalog to make that easy to discover. And the other part is what we call a developer compliance center, where as an admin, you prompt makers to provide you with further details about the applications that they've developed, such as the business justification and dependencies and the user management. And again, through that, you build a bigger picture of what applications are in your tenant, and you get a more holistic overview of not just the app name and the connectors, but also what the maker puts in to describe their application.
That's great. And I know someone also asked that, hey, but what if I don't have Power BI? The interesting thing to understand is that the starter kit that Manuel has built up, the same underlying data is available through our PowerShell scripts and also through the admin connectors that are available in the platform today. So you actually can effectively enumerate assets and their permissions through either PowerShell or through using Flow or Power Apps themselves. So you can effectively build your own starter kit yourself on the Power Platform or through PowerShell if you don't have Power BI for your own organization. And so you really do have that flexibility if you want to get your hands a little bit more dirty, depending on your tool of choice in terms of what we have available. One other question here that I like that Michael called out is around version control and release processes, right? And talking about how you kind of manage change management. And what that looks like. And I know, Manuel, you answered this in the context of like the testing and what we have in the previous session. So maybe could you speak to that a little bit? Like, what are we doing in terms of like test automation and collaboration and DevOps from a platform perspective today?
Sure, I'll give it a go. So in terms of kind of like version control and source control, we've obviously got the tools on top of DevOps. So the Power Apps build tools that allow you to put the source into your source control and then publish that through a test and production pipeline there, and that is being enhanced with not only the ability to use Azure DevOps but also Git, the actions there. So that's really exciting there to see. And typically what we see in terms of kind of version control is that the more mature the development lifecycle is, the CoE team helps makers stand up those pipelines to move applications through that life cycle of dev, build, test, and production there, and keep the code in source control as the version of truth, and then your development environments basically become disposable through that.
Yeah, that's great. And I just saw a question come in around app performance, right? So I know we're doing a lot around app analytics and diagnostics. I wonder if you could say like, hey, how do I test in performance and optimize my applications, both I think from maybe a maker perspective and also maybe from more a central or admin perspective. Could you share a little bit more on that?
Right. So yes, James, we're investing heavily in perf and DIAX bucket. Ryan's session also spoke to specifically for CDS model-driven apps. We now have toolkit as well as detailed data stream for both perf and diagnostic flowing into app insights that admins and sort of monitors within the organization can go and engage and troubleshoot the perf and the error incidents in the org. For apps specifically, for maker personas, for individual apps, there are similar app insights data streams that are provided to individual makers. And for the admin persona, we are working upon similar to the CDS model where you can go to Power Platform Admin Center shortly and go create an app insight instance and get all of the perf and DIAX data funneled through that stream. Similarly, for Canvas apps, for flows, etc., you would be able to get rolled up information. So assume in a production environment, you have 5 line of business applications running. You would be able to set up a app insights stream where you can, as an admin at an environment level, look at all of your perf and DIAX data, troubleshoot, and take the appropriate actions. This would, of course, be in addition to just the oversight out-of-box reports on perf and errors. We today show rudimentary reports at an environment level, and we'll roll it up at a tenant level as well as at the environment type level.
That's awesome. I think that another thing that I want to call out, and I think someone had this question around best practices for building model-driven apps. I really would point people towards, there's an awesome new YouTube series that features many awesome people from our team, including Manuela, and it's actually the Power Apps and Power Automate Architecture series on YouTube. And there are great topics there around ALM, around governance, around CoE, also around app building and modeling. So you want to talk about performance tuning, model-driven app development. There's really, it's stuff for everyone there, and they're really in depth, and they're told from people that are really some experts in terms of each of these topics and working with a lot of our customers today. So if you want to really get some detailed topic around app building, tuning, performance, governance, check that out. And I replied to one of the I think Gori's post around coding standards. But if you just search the architecture series for Power Apps, it's a great resource for folks on YouTube. I think that Gori also has some just maker questions around best practices around fetching large data in Power Apps. And Ryan, maybe you want to speak to kind of delegation. Yeah. When to collect, when to delegate, like what's the future there from an app building perspective?
I mean, look, there's a lot of options there. One of them is when you're working with data in CDS, you're always going to have, I would say, the most premium experience because Power Apps is natively built on top of it, doesn't even use the connector infrastructure, can scale to really high volumes, and it's an onboard platform that we natively understand. Of course, not all data is in CDS. You talk to SQL databases, you talk to SharePoint lists, you talk to lots of other things that are large. And for that, we invest in that infrastructure in supporting a lot of those operations as delegable. Which means that we don't just pull a subset of data and then do the logic on the client. We actually push that query all the way back to the data source and rely on that data source to return results from that query and return them, frankly, performantly and at scale. So a couple of tools and tips and tricks that you can use there. One, first and foremost, when you're building your app, you can go into settings and you can actually control how many records Power Apps will hold in the client at any given time. And you can turn that number all the way down to 0, which basically means that you will force everything to be evaluated on the server as opposed to allowing things to be evaluated on the client. So it's a good way to basically test in real time what's delegable and what's not, and be able to express queries in a certain way. And for some connectors, those underlying APIs or the connector infrastructure in the middle will delegate some of those queries, but not all of them. For example, in SharePoint, I can delegate a starts with query, but not a contains query, and so I can reach large data volumes that way. So you can work with it there. The other set of tools you've got, and the challenge you'll run into, is that if you're pushing a very large and complicated query, or in many cases many large and complicated queries out to an external data source, even if it does delegate, it may be very slow. And so you can use Monitor, which is a tool inside of the Power Apps Studio, to see in real time what's happening behind either a live runtime session of an app or even while you're building the app, and actually see how long those queries are taking and where the slowness in loading those pages is coming in your connector calls. And it turns out if you're building a page that goes and fetches data from lots of different data sources all at once, all in one screen, and they're big and they're slow, it's going to take time to load that screen. You can come in and start to optimize the performance of it. That's why people start choosing to cache some of that data on the client as well. So there's a lot of, there's some good docs on performance tuning and optimization, also some good conference sessions that are out there. Mehdi has some great sessions on the PowerCat team, particularly about how to do this. There's, and then that architecture series will definitely go into more depth on it. But absolutely possible to work with Power Apps over very large data sets. Just like any other software operation, it takes some elbow grease and some planning to do it well and do it performantly.
Yeah. Thank you, Ryan. And I think we're effectively at time. I think we actually covered a lot today. And thank you all for your questions and for tuning in to Ryan's session. I know we really love connecting with the community and hearing about all the awesome ways that folks are leveraging the platform today. So thank you all again for tuning in today.
100%.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Awesome.
questions. That was awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.